Learning SQL changed my career and my life. I started as a beginner with no technical background, and once I became a data analyst, it became an essential tool for my day-to-day work. This allowed me to advance in my career and make more money along the way. Having started from nothing, here's how I would approach learning SQL if I had to start all over again. Hi everyone, my name is Matt Mike. I'm a data analyst who came from a non-technical background. I graduated with a degree in English, was a teacher for a few years, went into operations, and eventually made my way into data. I don't have a technical degree, and I bootstrapped my way into the field, so now I make videos to help others do the same. Also, I made some updates to my office. Looks a little different back there. Probably gonna make a few more changes as I'm just in the mood of wanting to spruce up my office a bit. All right, so first, let's quickly jump in and talk about what is SQL. SQL, or SQL, stands for Structured Query Language, and it's the language of databases. It's how we communicate with databases. It's a way for us to retrieve, update, and manage data efficiently. While it can seem kind of complicated, it's surprisingly intuitive. When I first began learning SQL, I thought it was going to be a pretty daunting task. Coding's scary, but once I did my first query and I learned my first functions, I was blown away at how easy it is. Maybe you're already familiar with SQL, but I wanted to give that introduction. Next, let's go over why you should learn SQL. Well, first off, it's an in-demand skill for plenty of data roles like data analyst, business analyst, data scientist, and even some roles like project manager. Sometimes these roles require a little bit of technical background, and it helps to have a skill like SQL under your belt. It allows you to uncover more insights and support better decision making, so you could start to answer questions like, why did this product perform better than the others? Or what are the customer sentiments about our product, or what does the data say about that? You can answer those questions easily with SQL. So overall, it's a foundational skill for working with data in any capacity. So let's dive into the steps now. The first one being choosing an environment. So there are a ton of different flavors of SQL out there, and they're all fundamentally the same with just some slight differences in syntax. But fundamentally, they're all doing the same thing. Some of the more common options are PostgreSQL, MySQL, SQLite, or even Google BigQuery. Doesn't really matter which one you choose, just pick one and then begin learning the fundamentals of SQL. Once you've chosen an environment, we can move on to step 2, which is mastering the fundamentals. And the most fundamental functions to learn, which are going to cover a pretty wide amount of basic queries, are covered in the Big 6. The Big 6 is select, from, where, group by, having, and order by. This isn't a video to teach SQL itself, but going over those real quickly, select is how you choose your columns. From is where you specify the table. Where is how you filter rows. Group by is how you group data for aggregation. Having is how you filter that group's data. And order by is how you then sort the results. So again, these 6 functions are going to cover a ton of ground with SQL and cover most basic queries. Beyond that, the next fundamental skill that you want to learn are joins. Joins are used to combine and retrieve data from multiple tables in the same query. It allows you to analyze different tables together using a joining column. Data is often spread across multiple tables, and you'll often have to reference multiple tables in your query to get the data that you need. This makes joins an essential function. So quick review of the fundamentals you want to make sure you tackle first, and that's the Big 6 and joins. Moving on, the third step is hands-on practice. You want to avoid passive learning. It's easy to just watch a bunch of videos or courses and not really put those things you're learning into practice. But especially with tools like SQL, you're gonna want to practice it often. Remember that it stands for Structured Query Language. It is a language. You gotta use that language to really get used to it and get comfortable with it, especially since there's a lot to learn. A great way to practice is with SQL practice platforms. I think a good way to develop your confidence over time is to practice for 15 minutes a day, or even if you just tackle one problem on the website per day or something like that. And another more practical way to practice, if you can, not everyone may have this option, but using SQL at work. And I say not everyone will have this option because some people will be in a role where it's kind of difficult for them to get access to databases, or they may not be able to get that approval. But if you can get access to the databases, not to change them, but just to use them for querying, that can be super helpful for you to begin practicing with data that's very relevant to you, and even doing some cool analysis within your company or team. So see if you can get connected to your company's database and start playing around with queries. You could try to do things like automate reports or clean messy data for reports. Or if you're on a team that uses SQL or adjacent to a team that uses SQL, you could use query sharing tools like the sponsor of today's video, Sherlock. Sherlock is an incredible platform for query sharing and collaboration. It sits seamlessly on top of your current SQL editing platform, so you can start using it without having to learn another tool. Sherlock also has robust features for monitoring query performance. By analyzing execution times and identifying bottlenecks, it helps you optimize your query for faster and more efficient results. Another very notable feature is Sherlock's ability to save queries for future use or share them with your team. You can even version control your queries to track changes over time. I've been on teams where this was really important, and we just saved our queries in like the Windows notepad, and it was really terrible. I wish we had something like Sherlock at the time. So this means no more confusion about what the latest query is or losing anything like that. Sherlock makes it very easy. So it's a very straightforward and practical option for any data professional or data team. Definitely check it out. I'll have a link in the description below, and thanks again to Sherlock for sponsoring this video. Now let's move on to the fourth and final step, which is going beyond the basics. This is tackling more advanced query functions. And this could be an ongoing process. There's a lot of functions out there in the SQL universe, but some of the more common advanced functions you're going to want to know are things like subqueries, which are queries within queries. It's useful for breaking down complex query into multiple steps and making it digestible. Another one is window functions, which allows you to do things like calculate ranks, running totals, or percentages within a data set without grouping the data. And then common table expressions, or CTEs. This function simplifies complex queries by breaking them into reusable components. Super helpful function, which allows you to really clean up your queries. So I'd say these three types of advanced functions alone will cover a lot of mileage. And if you can master these, you'll have a lot more versatility over your queries, and you'll be able to solve more complex analyses. Functions like these are sometimes required in technical interviews too, so over time, you're definitely going to want to get more comfortable with these. And really, I'd say anyone at any stage who's using SQL in some capacity can benefit from any of these steps, whether it's the more basic functions or the more advanced functions, and practicing regularly, whether that's on your own time or that's in your work with your company's data set. So again, that's how I would approach learning SQL if I had to start all over again. I hope that was helpful for you. Hope it at least gave you a nice framework, some guidance to learn SQL for yourself. If you did find the video helpful or you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, as it does help out the channel. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time. But before you go, be sure to check out this video where I go over how I would learn Power BI as fast as possible if I had to start all over again.